I like the people I work with. Someday, I'll meet them in person. Virtual teams get things done. Unknown. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode number 14, Leading a Virtual Team with James Nieves. Hey everybody, it's Scott back with Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. I hope everybody's doing great. I know I am. It's a great time of year for me personally. It's the Stanley Cup Finals, or not the finals, but the playoffs, and my team is doing okay. Montreal Canadiens, if you're wondering. And everything's great. Been busy with work, so this podcast is coming out a little bit later. If you don't know, I'm a senior military officer in the Canadian Army, so life is a bit busy right now. As I like to say, we're in the busiest time of the busiest period of the year. Today I got a great show lined up for you. What we're going to get into in a little bit later is a interview with James Nieves, once from Berry Flow and Crackberry. If you don't know those two websites, they're BlackBerry enthusiast websites. James has a lot of experience working with virtual teams and the like, so there's going to be a lot of great info coming out from this interview. But before we get into the interview, I want to go over a few things with you, because there's lots of great things going on, which I'm developing for you here at the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, and, well, the whole Moving Forward Leadership site and everything with it. So I'm just going to dive into a few of those things. First off, if you're just listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. Okay, you've come across a podcast all about leadership and developing your leadership skills through just practical examples and advice from myself and other guests that I have on the air. There is no high-level theory or anything here. It's just literally practical, good, solid advice, okay? So welcome. If this is your 20th time listening or whatever, that's quite all right. Welcome you too, because you're helping me become successful. I'm quite happy with where this podcast is going, and that's all due to you guys, the listeners. So on top of that, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, so that you don't actually miss out on any episodes, right? And it's really easy. I made it super easy for you to subscribe, because this podcast is quite literally available anywhere where podcasts are played. So you can find it on Shout Engine, so that's my hosting platform. Google Play Music, of course. iTunes, because every podcast is on iTunes apparently, and as well as Stitcher. And if you're listening through some kind of app, either on your phone or your tablet, of course you can get that through through those apps, right? So go ahead, subscribe, download all the previous episodes that you haven't listened to yet, because there's all kinds of great advice and tips and guidance in there. Okay, and enjoy. And please, while you're doing that, what I'd ask from you is just leave a quick review on whatever platform you're listening to me from. It really is basically the best thing you could do for me right now. Reviews help me and tell people that, hey, you should come listen to this podcast. If you're enjoying it, that's a great way to bring more listeners in on board. As well, I'd like to tell you about a new way you can thank me, and that is through a Patreon account, which I've now set up. If you're unfamiliar with Patreon, it's basically a website/platform that allows people to help out small little businesses or artists or whatever, all the different things of the like, through financial funding. So you go on there, you go to patreon.com/MFL_podcast. Or you can just go to the show notes at movingforwardleadership.com/podcasts/virtual. And from there, the link for the Patreon account, my Patreon account, will be in there. And, you can go in there and you can basically pledge some money per month. And that will actually enable me to get into developing more professionally, okay? Right now, this podcast is being produced by Endpoint Media, which is a great help for me, so be sure to check out them as well, endpointmedia.co. But the Patreon, what that will enable me to do will, down the line, be able to buy better equipment, outsource some more services to professionals, such as my website and so on, and become more and more professional. So with the Patreon, there are 3 different levels. There's what I refer to as the intern level, the VP level, and then the CEO level. And those 3 tiers have different pricing. And with that, you get different perks and benefits that I'll give out to you. So please, I ask you to just swing by, have a look at it, think about it, and if you want to give back to me a little bit, this is a great way to do so. All right. The next thing I wanted to let you know about is still, if you haven't listened to my last episode, okay, you should, but if you haven't, well, guess what? I have an ebook out right now, okay? The 9 Foundations of Leadership. So this ebook costs $5 US. It's out on Amazon, but I'm doing all the listeners a solid on this one and giving you guys a favor in that you can actually get that ebook for free, all right? So just swing by the show notes. There will be a link in there for the ebook. All you need to do is fill out the form that's there, follow the steps, the Gleam form, and you're basically just follow me on. It'll ask you to follow me on social media and sign up to my newsletter. Once you've done those steps, you'll get the ebook for free. Now, if you got through that and you haven't successfully get it all done, for some reason, a couple people's web browsers haven't negotiated it well for whatever reason. One step wasn't complete even though they did it. Just reach out to me on either Twitter or email and let me know that. And what I'll do is I'll be able to send you a free copy of that ebook. All right. So swing by the site, the show notes. Or you can just go to the movingforwardleadership.com website and you just scroll all the way down to the homepage and you'll see it there. The ebook is for free. It's a great read. I've had a number of great reviews back on it for only a short read. It's only something like 20 pages long. And there's all kinds of practical examples. And again, it's basically what I refer to as the 9 Foundations of Leadership, which will help you in turn develop your own leadership style. And from there, be able to develop yourself into a great leader. Couple last things I'd like to get into before we dive into the interview with James. The first thing is, of course, my best read section. So on the website at movingforwardleadership.com, there's a best read section in there. Swing by. There's 4 books in there which I highly recommend to people to read if you're getting into leadership and you want to learn more. On top of listening to this podcast, of course. All right. So swing by there. There are 4 great books. You may not have read them all, and some of them are actually from former military officers with all kinds of great experience and great knowledge. Have a read of those as well. There is one book in there which deals with how to plan your day so that you do everything at the best time of day. It's a really interesting read. It's referred to as The Power of When. And that book, I use it on a daily basis so that as I go through my day and making my decisions or writing out emails or doing strategic level planning, so on and so forth, even recording these podcasts, for example, I revolve around my schedule around this book as best as I can. So that one is highly recommended as well if you want to basically operate at your peak and the best times of day when you're able to. Finally, don't forget about my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Moving Forward Leadership. As well, there is a Facebook group. I've developed a Facebook group for people to talk leadership. Basically, let's develop a community for people that, you got questions, you want answers, you want to give tips, advice, whatever, different scenarios. Feel free to come by this group, Facebook.com/groups/Moving Forward Leadership. Again, this is all going to be in the show notes, folks. So you don't have to remember every single link. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/podcast/virtual. Okay? I promise there is only a couple last things, and that is, please sign up for the monthly newsletter. You are missing out if you're not signed up for that. Okay? I push out, of course, all the updates to the podcast, updates to what's going on with the website that you don't actually hear about on the podcast episodes, and updates for myself, and a number of leadership articles which you may not know exist, and there's all kinds of great tips, advice in these articles that I've been reading on a daily basis, okay? So swing by the website. You'll see the monthly newsletter sign up at the top, or again, show notes. The link will be there. All right? Finally, if you get any suggestions on future topics you'd like to hear, please don't hesitate. Send them to me either through Twitter, Facebook message me, or shoot me an email at scott@movingforwardleadership.com, and I will gladly look into it and try to set it up. I'm definitely working on getting more guests in the future because I think guest episodes are definitely something people enjoy more so than just listening to me all the time. However, I need your input to know what type of guests you would like to hear on the show, okay? So don't be shy. Reach out to me. I know there's a large number of you listening out there. This show will obviously be better if the more interaction I get with you. And hey, I want to learn more about you, right? I want to learn who you are, where you're from, and what your interests are. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump into the interview now with James. So, sit back and enjoy the show, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Scott McCarthy, and today I'm here with my guest, James. James, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
So I just want to give you an opportunity to explain to my listeners out there, who you are, your background, and all that jazz. So why don't you go ahead and do that for us first?
I'm a young guy, right? I'm approaching my quarter life crisis here. A lot of my background is coming from like the customer service industry. I've worked there, about 4 years. Also done a lot on social media as well, and kind of marrying those two pillars together. So that's a lot of my background.
For sure. We met up for a while now when you were over at working your site Berryflow, and as well you from there moved on to Crackberry. And basically you were leading teams, right? Especially with the Berryflow experience that you have. And so what kind of basically led you down that leadership road, where you took a team under your wing and started developing them and developing them towards a vision that you had especially for that site Berryflow?
Yeah. Passion and energy was one of the main things, right? I absolutely knew at that point in the website that I needed help, and I needed to bring people together because there's so many people out there who are, you can consider untapped potential. So I think one of the key areas of leadership that really drove me early on was that leaders are coaches, right? Fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you can come at someone from a coaching perspective and really kind of show them what's in it for them, then you can really start to activate people. And that's what we did at Berryflow, right? We gathered some people, some creatives together, and we kind of got under one type of mindset so that we could drive toward, the goal, building the website, building the brand back in 2013. So, that's definitely something that started leading me down the road, but it expands from there, right? Because you're working remotely. These people live globally, right? And how do you go around managing all of that? So I think the next step down that path is, come at it from a coaching perspective, but then look at tools. Tools are so important, right? Because we're working virtually, we know everybody has a different preference of what they want to use, be it software, mobile apps, and such. So I think as you go down that road, you need to look at tools that you personally like, right? Tools you can get behind, because then you have to be able to coach people on why these tools are effective, how we're going to use these tools, right? And that, I think, lays the foundation for a good communication. And really that, I think, is how you can start to kind of get around managing a virtual team. And we're all on different, clients for chat and messaging and some of those basics. And each platform has its own benefits, right?
That's great. I think one of the things that you just struck out to me personally was straight out of gate and talk about that passion that you had to start the site. And any leaders doing anything, start up anything, definitely needs that passion. So that's great to hear. So, you worked on the site for a number of years, about close to 4 years, I think.
Yep.
You definitely, had a team spread across the globe, I would say. And so out of your experience with Berryflow, what do you feel were the benefits of running a virtual team compared to, the standard team that you would have had at a normal, brick and mortar job type thing?
Yeah. But before I get to the benefits of that virtual team, I think one of the key things that helped me down the road was that I was in brick and mortar and I was managing a large team. And that team I also had to communicate with virtually. And, just as I talked about communication earlier, understanding kind of which battles to pick, so to speak, in terms of what's good to communicate over, a virtual means versus going to see someone in person. A lot of those core competencies really help getting your head around what makes a virtual team truly beneficial. You asked that question, and the first thing that came to mind for me is that the fact that I can have someone's perspective in a place that I'm not is so vital to really fleshing out the entire team kind of status quo, right? If I have someone over in India or in Canada or over in Russia, the types of perspectives, the things they see that I maybe won't, that's super, super impressive to have versus maybe 5-10 people in one location, kind of all under one roof, looking in one direction, right? That type of calibration is definitely important for businesses. But as you really want to focus on leading a team virtually, you need to be able to pull out those different assets and really make them shine. So having those different perspectives that the virtual team can offer you can help you solve problems very quickly, right? I don't have to work necessarily around a constrained time schedule of the people that I have locally. I can now work in different time zones, or I can get things done in different ways so I can make sure the right person has the right task at the right time.
That's great. And I really like your thoughts on communication there. I've always said to my guys that, my actual job, that communication is priority number one, and it has to be all the time. And the funny thing is, it's the thing we do the most, but yet it's the thing we do the worst, I always found. It's just pure communication. There's definitely got to be some benefits in leading a virtual team in that you get access to different cultures, different talents across the planet a lot easier than in your standard brick and mortar, wouldn't you think?
Totally. You got to think, like, if I'm in one location, everybody's skill sets are almost stacked upon one another, right? So there's not a lot of width in terms of, how fleshed out the experience is in that team. I'm not a doctor, and working in one building, I may never meet a doctor or speak with a doctor or get a doctor's perspective, but I could reach over to India and tap someone like that and really pull in just really rich experiences. And, if you're trying to sell something, have an end product in mind, you want to be able to tap resources that ultimately can represent your line of thinking in the best way possible. And bringing that together is also kind of one of the challenges that you're going to face when you're working with people like this, because virtually it comes back to the same human principles that, you and I lead off of, and that's trust, right? You need to build trust in people first. And doing that virtually is even tougher, right? So you need to go out of your way sometimes to create tangible, real world, reactions and substance there, so that you can build those relationships and then guide them toward whatever goals the business or individual may have.
Yeah. And you kind of started to lead into where I'd like to look at next. And that's the other side of the coin. We talk about benefits, but of course, every benefit has a challenge associated with it. And yeah, there are a lot of benefits to leading a virtual team, but I'm sure there's going to be tons of challenges associated with it as well. What do you think are some of the key ones there in that realm?
I think one of the biggest challenges is immediacy, right? We live in this world of instant gratification connected via the internet. So I think it's tough to have everyone in the same playing field at the same time running the same plays, right? And that's something a local team is really good at, right? You can kind of oversee in real time what's going on. Whereas with virtual teams, you're working with people in different places with different, work schedules, lifestyles, time zones. So when balancing all of that, while there are benefits, you really need to be able to get people together still in real time to drive some of those objectives. And that can be very difficult, right? A virtual meeting can sometimes be very easy to kind of clock out on and not pay attention when it's not, happening right there in front of you physically. So again, it goes back to, if you want to overcome that type of challenge, building that type of trust and relation and rapport with your people so that you can ultimately activate them to find the time. And I hate that saying, really, finding time it's really something you got to make, right? You got to go out of your way to make time for things, especially in our crazy modern age.
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't matter whether that's work or life, man. You got to find the time to, or make the time, sorry, to do what needs to get done. And you kind of hit at some things that are deep to me in that, building relationships are always priority number one whenever I show up to a new team. And it really, I think in a virtual realm, it's definitely a bit of a challenge because human beings are social people, right? And we're so used to that, physical presence, not necessarily physical contact, but presence, shaking someone's hand, talking to them face to face, looking at them in the eye, having a coffee or whatever. So it definitely to me leads down the road of that is a challenge that you have to set as priority one that you want to get over when you're leading virtual team. Do you have any tips out there for how to get over some of these challenges for people, the challenges that you've come across in the past?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, finding what's in it for them. And that just requires empathy, which is tough for a lot of people, right? Empathy is that human reaction. It's putting yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of seeing things from their perspective versus yours. And a good leader needs to have empathy, right? And I've heard you talk about it previously on your podcasts. So I know you get it. And empathy it's so hard to teach because it's really something that comes naturally to so many people. It's just that human reaction. Like you see someone fall, you ask them, are you okay? Right? That type of interaction is, I think, critical to virtual teams, that you ask people how their day is going. You do try to buy in on a little bit of their life and what they're doing and see what their goals are, maybe personally outside of kind of your shared passions or shared interests or shared work culture, right? And again, that's how you create real connections with people. And in doing that, I think you build a good foundation to start getting over some of those challenges. Once you have, I think, the kind of bedrock there, then you need to start planting some seeds, right? And finding what people are best at. And once you find what people are best at, they don't have to waste time doing things they're not good at. And again, that's something that a lot of times you may not know off the bat. So you kind of need to challenge them with different things and see what the results are. And if you can work down that type of path and continue to build on that, you're going to find your shining stars, right? And those are the people that you absolutely want to build up. If you're looking at a virtual team, let's say you have a large virtual team, there's two philosophies that I like to follow. You need to inspect what you expect, right? I think that's really important. And also you need to manage the middle, which is to say, if I have low performers, middle performers, and top performers, that I need to look at the low and middle to be spending more of my time developing, right? And giving it there. If I've got all-stars, like my all-stars, I'm going to continue to let them kind of be all-stars and not interrupt their growth because they're already on the trajectory, right? And maybe just touch base, but manage the middle, right? Get the middle group to the higher grounds that, as a team, you all can move more quickly together and more effectively. So with those two principles, and again, building back on that human relationship with that real person, right? It's not just a screen. It's not just a voice or an avatar. I mean, there's someone there. Building off of that can really help you get around how you need to manage those teams. And again, people learn different ways. People need to be interacted with differently, right? There's some people you may approach as a partner. There's some people you may approach as a teacher. There's other people who may need more disciplinary type focus, right? If they're really, not focused on their task or getting out of hand and off track on what the mission is. But again, understanding your approach is important there too. And empathy is a good thing to have and practice often so that you can have the skills necessary to manage a virtual team well. Some of the other challenges that come up, I think, are just setting clear expectations, right? Because that's something that I think hampers a lot of leaders out there.
That comes up either virtually or even face to face. I think a lot of people this day and age overcomplicate virtual teams, in my opinion, and that, how to get over challenges. The principles are basically the same, right? Building rapport, building relationships, setting clear expectations, much like you said. It's just the medium has changed. And I think a lot of people have forget that or haven't realized that. And as long as you can play within that medium of, the phone or the computer, Skype, whatever, however you communicate with them, and you actually use that to its maximum potential, then you should get over the challenges just like any other team, whether or not you're virtual or not, in my perspective anyway.
Yep. And online talent is one of those things, virtual talent is one of those things it is a commodity, right? And while people are like intrinsically so valuable for different reasons, when you're building a team, you need to understand that people may come in and participate just in spades, right? They may come here and there in different spurts and whatnot. So maybe a larger team is better when you're working virtually, so that you can pull different assets in kind of when you can as well. That's a big thing that I noticed across, my tenure building out my own online website, was that there's so many people out there, right? And you want to activate every single one of them, but there's seasons and trends and cycles, as with everything in life. Things come up, people change, interests change, priorities change. So being able to come back at those types of things and overcome them is so important. So you need to have, plan B, C, D kind of lined up already while you're managing team A, because you can really get off track and slow down that type of growth if you start losing key members who do contribute and ultimately can't get to your types of business objectives. So it's really, I think, important that when you look at challenges, you need to look at them as opportunities, right? And seeing how you can turn that, obstacle or barrier really into a doorway for you to get higher and move further.
Absolutely. I always say to my guys that every challenge represents an opportunity as well. You just got to see it there. So that's a lot of great advice to my listeners out there. Do you get any other advice that you'd like to head out on leading a virtual team?
If with a virtual team, I think one of the things that is easiest and that should be done often is just have fun, right? That's so important.
I think at this age, so many businesses just forget about that key principle.
Absolutely. And leaders too. It can't all just be go, 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 go. You need to ask those types of personal questions, but you also need to maybe create yourself a little virtual water cooler, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that lives outside of your core work apps, but it still exists in that network of people and assets still can commingle maybe in another place. But that virtual water cooler is, I think, another bit of advice that is super important for leaders to consider. Have an outlet that you can connect. And I think the two kind of marry with one another over time, and that's how you can continue to compound things. I like to manage through the ideas of thinking and working against what types of reactions am I creating in my people, right? And I really like to get my head around reaction management across a lot of different types of principles of leadership. But reaction management to me fits my style the best, so that I can kind of predict and try to align what I'm doing now with what I expect later. Again, back to that inspect what you expect mentality. So get around the water cooler and think about those things. What can I expect to get out of this? And how are people going to get value from kind of decompressing from the work day and the hustle and grind that we all go through?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a lot of great advice for the listeners out there. I think overall, to sum it up, try to make the physical work environment, replicate as much as you possibly can virtually. I think that would sum you up pretty good there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that, to me, that definitely would be a great way forward. We're going to wind down here. I try to keep these podcasts relatively short so that my listeners, one, don't get too bored, but two, they can listen to it during their commute or whatever. So I got one last question, which I actually didn't pre-plan for or pre-show you, and I'd like to ask you what you think makes a great leader.
I think I touched on that right out of the gate, right? A coach, that mentality has to be there, and in coaching, it's not so much. I'll rephrase it this way: that I think a good leader needs to show more than tell, right? They need to show and lead and really open the door, pull the person through it, and put them in a place where they can do right? And enable that type of culture around them, so that really people want to work and they want to achieve because they find personal benefit and growth in it. So I think those are some good qualities in a leader.
Awesome. You kind of hit at some of the points that I make in my my ebook there, the 9 Foundations of Leadership. So I think we're all on the same page. Well, James, I'm going to wrap it up here. First off, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming. I know this has actually been a long time in the making because we were trying to scheduling issues and so on and so forth. So again, Dan, thanks for your time. You got any last parting words you'd like to say to the listeners of the Moving Forward Leadership podcast?
For those of you guys listening, this podcast is definitely on track to make some noise. Seeing some of those early episodes and getting to hear them and seeing the progress that it's on is really just exciting to kind of witness. So Scott, just keep up the fantastic work and we're all rooting for you.
Oh man, thanks. That means a lot to me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign off from here. So thanks for coming out. James, again, thanks for coming on the show, man. Take care.
Take it. Later.
Hey guys, it's Scott, and I just want to do a quick wrap up here with the topics that James hit on and some of the key points that really came out of that interview with him. So I got 4 here, which you might want to take note of, okay? And that's basically one of the first things he said out of the gate. Leaders are coaches, and I've been saying that for quite a while, and that's one of the reasons why this podcast even exists, right? Leaders are coaches. We're there to mentor, help, develop people. So that point really resonated with me when James said it, and I figured I'd like to point it out for you as well. The second point that I'd like to make is that when he said communication is key, right? And I kind of added to it when I said that I always say the one thing we do the most is the one thing we do the worst, right? And communication is key, and especially when you're talking about a virtual team. If you don't have communication with that virtual team, it is much easier for it to go off track and not actually achieve what you're looking for to achieve. So keep that in mind. The third point, which I really like that he brought out, was the whole topic of inspect what you expect. And I thought that was great and really good saying. I already generally manage your expectations, which is kind of not as flowy as what James had to say, but still, the principle is still the same. Keep your expectations in check. Make sure that they're in line with reality, and that will actually help you down the line. And then the final thing with the wrap up today, which really hit with me, was when he said, basically be a doer, show advice telling people. And if you have gotten your copy of my ebook, The 9 Foundations of Leadership, well, guess what? That is actually foundation number 1, right? Where to sum it up, is lead by example. Be that example for your people. So I hope you enjoyed the show today. I know I did personally. It was great to have James on. Me and him have been trying to get the show off the ground for quite a while now, and I'm really happy it's finally done. In a good way, of course. So keep all these things in mind. And again, keep moving, keep achieving, keep moving forward. Thanks now. Take care.